birthright of every child, all of us when we were children, to be doted upon and to grow up in a home where there's love, where there's safety, and where there's predictability. And so having said all that, why am I saying this? Because I don't know how many of us grew up with that. Many of us might not have. And even sometimes the most well-intentioned parents they just whiff in certain areas. Not because they meant to, but it's because that's all they knew. And maybe they were, we were unconsciously reenacting what we knew growing up. And so these are losses. And inevitably, we're going to have to deal with that. And, as the old adage goes, when it comes to grief, we can run, but we can't hide. And, one of the things, all the years that I kind of did counseling and all my years as a priest, sometimes I've observed that where we try to run from grief. And the more we run from it, the worse it becomes. And it's kind of like a dog. I hate to use that analogy, but when you encounter an aggressive dog, the worst thing you're supposed to do is run because it's going to chase you. And then the encounter is usually worse. But if you lean into it, if you do the opposite of avoidance, and you lean into that dog and let him sniff your hand, usually you have a better chance that encounter is going to go well. Well, grief is a lot like that. We have to learn to turn and face it and to lean into it in order not to wallow in it, but to get out on the other side. You see, there's a constructive purpose to it. And so, so we have disenfranchised losses, the loss of a normal childhood. I didn't have that relationship with my father like I wanted to have. And I didn't have that relationship with my mother that I should have. I didn't have that carefree environment growing up. It was stressful. Maybe there were things we saw or witnessed or experienced that were unnatural and that we should not have. And that God would not ever want us to experience. But experiences happen because of the free will of others and the misuse of it. And these are losses. And sometimes, we go through we can live a whole lifetime never acknowledging these things as losses for a number of reasons. Sometimes people, come in for counseling and, I went through this. But other people have it worse. I mean, it's not like this happened. It's not like anybody murdered anybody or anything like that. Well, but what happened is not okay. And sometimes they'll continually have this narrative of, but Father, there's people overseas that have it far worse. This is true. But nevertheless, your experience was real. And then how I usually can drive home the point that what you experienced is not okay, or was painful, or needs to be grieved, or at least acknowledged or articulated. I say, what you just shared with me that you went through growing up? I say, just let's do a little imagination here. I said, imagine your kids. Imagine you doing that to your kids. And 100% of the time, there's a visceral reaction. They, all of a sudden, their whole countenance changes. Their face turns red. They get emotional. No, no. Hold on, you're telling me what happened to you was not significant. And that can't have anything to do with why you're struggling now. So if that's true, imagine if what was done to you or what you experienced, you recreated for your kid. And they start to cry. I say, I could never go there. And I see, but that's what happened to you. And then they understand. And then the door opens and they realize that, I've been telling myself a story for the past 50 years or however many years that this was significant. And I'm not being a crybaby because I'm acknowledging this. I'm not falling into the sin of self-pity or self-loathing. I'm simply, this is part of my ascetical life. I had a wound inflicted, and I'm going to spend some time in my life to pause, mend that, close it up, so that I can move on and be at peace and have joy and it not disrupt my present. That's all. That's all spiritually healthy and beneficial.